we at Medici have been zooming our way through it, and I've been doing that with another choir as well. My church choir has been doing a similar thing to the Camino, of recording from home, with some slightly alarming repertoire at times. And I've spent many hours working out how to get my keyboard to sound like a sensible organ. Not my skill set, but we've been able to do something. But the first time that I was able to turn up to church and do a service with just one singer singing some music, actually making music with another human being, it was just wonderful. And you think, there are times when you go through all this that you think, actually maybe we should give all this up and go and work in a supermarket. Everyone needs supermarkets. But actually, you come back to it and you do it again in real life, and you think, oh yeah, there's nothing like this, and we will be back to it. And when we are, we'll be so grateful for what we've missed over these last few months.
I've been sitting in your rehearsal for the last 20 or 30 minutes, and I think the key thing that I picked up was your enthusiasm for people keeping focused on what we do. This is very easy to lose, both artistically, mentally, and physically. So your idea of drinking gallons of red wine to lubricate the vocal cords,
absolutely,
and lots of practice, I think it's brilliant. Our project works in 4 weekly steps, we call them. And the first step was the Ave Verum, because that was a very good place to start, as Mary Poppins said, or Julie Andrews rather. And then we moved on to the Agnus Dei from the Fauré. Tonight's rehearsal for Medici people was focused on the Fauré Requiem, and so we tackled the Agnus Dei, and we were delighted to have a little-known organist who joined us for that.
Very little known.
That was great, David, to have you on that. And so I wondered if I could just ask you about the Fauré, either the Agnus Dei musically, any particular thoughts, and also if your comments on the strategies that we used to put the thing together, because you can't just have everyone record it all at the same time. So and your experience with that.
Yeah. Well, actually, before I do, I shall take you back quite a few years, because I'm going to lay claim to the relationship between Brandenburg and Medici. Because I don't know if you remember, but I got a phone call from some strange man saying, I see the Bournemouth Sinfonietta Choir are doing the Fauré Requiem. This is my Dorset gang. Is there any chance you could stick them all in a minibus, get them up to London and do it at St Martin in the Fields? Because my choir's let me down. And I slightly suspiciously said, I'll talk to my chairman about it, see what he says. And he slightly suspiciously said, well, sounds. I've looked at it on the internet. It sounds kosher enough. Let's do it. So up we all traipsed and did a St Martin in the Fields for a requiem, which was very lovely. And then when John Baird said to me, I think we need a slightly better band than I've been fixing for concerts. Is there anyone you can recommend? I said, well, as it happens, there's this very nice gang I did a Fauré Requiem with, and I think they'd be all right. Why don't you try them out? So there you go. So the Fauré Requiem is what links me, you, and Medici. Oh, nice. Anyway, yeah, I mean, the Fauré is just one of those pieces that's so in the psyche of amateur choirs. It gets done. I look back on one of my choirs and they performed it more than any other piece, because it's such wonderful lyrical melodies. And from a conductor's point of view, any choir can get it up and running fairly quickly, but you can spend a term on it, and you can work singers so hard at their technique, at support, at producing the right sound. It's got everything there to really work a choir hard and make them improve a lot of things. So I think that's why it sort of sits in the repertoire where it does. Audiences love it, but actually it's a really good workout for a choir. And the Agnus Dei, has all of that. It's a brave choir of tenors that can sing that opening, but actually equally it's a great way to get tenors out of their shell, because it does lie in the voice so beautifully. And then all of those huge broad dynamics, so much to work on there, and the intonation in that middle section with those fabulous sort of Wagnerian harmonies, it's just a joy to work on, really. Even if it leaves you tearing your hair out sometimes. The online thing, I mean, this is something that's been thrust on us, really. It's happened before, and I think, Dude After America, Eric Whittaker did a bit of it before you had to, but the rest of us have been pushed into it. But it's been a really interesting exercise, and I've sung on a few things myself, and there's a lot of blooper tapes, most of which can't be played because I do a lot of swearing on them, because it's hard. You're in a room by yourself. That's not what you're used to doing. You're used to working with other singers, and you've got headphones in and you can half hear them. But I think a lot of people have found it a really good challenge to actually focus on what they're doing in a choir. The wallflowers have to come forward a little bit. And actually, I think everyone, whenever I've done these projects, everyone's been very pleased once the editing process is done. It is like being in a room. A choir is always more than the sum of its parts. And that goes for online exercises as well as, real singing. Not that this isn't real singing, but, normal music making.
When we did the Fauré, you were the last piece of the jigsaw.
Mm.
So what we're trying to do is to give people a lot of resources for learning, for those people who need to learn. Actually, all the people who think they know the Fauré Requiem, whenever you've done a come and sing of a Fauré Requiem, a third of the time is spent with people putting their hands up asking what the text is there, what the underlay is, how long is that note, because there's so many different editions.
Absolutely.
So you've got to actually coach people into unlearning their version to try and bring it all together.
Yeah, and that's very hard when you're doing it distantly. When you're in a room, you can hear that, but actually, there's a lovely Toscanini story about how he was wandering around backstage before a rehearsal, stomping up and down the corridors in an absolute fury. And the manager came to him and said, Maestro, what's wrong? Is there anything I can do to help? And he said, I know what they're going to do wrong. And actually, to an extent, that makes these online things possible, because there are always things that go wrong, and you do always slightly know what the problems are going to be before they happen. But you're absolutely relying on that when you're doing things remotely, because you don't get the feedback from the singers. It's very unnerving indeed.
Which organ you used to record it on?
Right, okay. Therein lies the tale. That was recorded on, I shall show you the keyboard itself, on this keyboard here, using this laptop here. There's a program called Hauptwerk, which is an incredibly geeky thing. This company have gone round and sampled every single pipe from various different organs. So they've been all over the world. They've done Salisbury Cathedral in England. They've done organs in Germany and the Netherlands, and lots in France. And literally every pipe is played and the sound is recorded, and then that's brought together into this piece of software. So in fact, that organ was St Anne's Moseley, which is a sort of traditional English two-manual organ. And you set it up on your keyboard, and you have to have all the registrations set on the computer before you start. And I click through them using the foot pedal. And I had to record different hands separately because I only had one keyboard and all of that. And then Matt magically put it all together with his magic. So in the same way that the singers were put together, the organ was actually sort of reconstructed after the event through technical wizardry. But these organs, I'm very good friends with a chap who is now organist of Durham Cathedral, but was at Salisbury Cathedral. And his 2 A-levels were music and woodwork. And as such, he managed to build himself an organ in his living room, which he set up with exactly the same registration as Salisbury Cathedral organ. And he could do all his practice at home, set up all his registrations at home, and then just wander over to the cathedral and do it. So it's a remarkable thing, and you can get very, very nerdy about it if that's the way you see things.
Brilliant. I thought I'd just share one of our little a technical thing that we used for the Fauré, because that middle section, while it is fantastic Wagnerian harmony, as you rightly say, it's a bit tricky.
Yeah.
And a lot of choirs tend to drift downwards in that section because it's the descending semitones that always kill us. And we set about the thought that there are disadvantages of recording remotely, but there are also advantages. And so it's not cheating to take advantage of the pluses because they're offsetting the minuses. So when the guys were singing, not only did they have a MIDI vocal choir behind them, not only did they have a MIDI organ underneath it, they also had a piano pinging out the first note of each bar. So that even if they went a little bit flat in one bar, it reorganised it. So it never, and the intonation is fantastic.
Yeah.
Is it cheating or is it using the facilities? Discuss.
Yeah, well, yes, quite.
Oh, so that was that. And then our next step is moving on to Bruckner, Locus iste. And I just wondered if you have got any pearls of wisdom to share with us in that general direction about Bruckner or the piece or anything at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, of all pieces, Locus iste is sort of the choir piece. It's the piece that you put singers together in a pub and they'll start singing it embarrassingly. You know, that's the one. But when I was at Wimborne, Patronal Festival was the first Sunday of the choir year, every year, first Sunday in September, an absolute pain in the neck. And I'd always put down Locus iste. And I would rehearse it obsessively. It's the only thing I'd spend much time on. Because if you take a group of singers and Locus iste and give it half an hour, you'll come out the other end as a choir. Because it's just got everything in terms of ensemble and blend and shaping and, you know, creating the sound that you really want from a choir. You know, it's, again, on the surface, it's so simple, but under the surface, it's so complex to really, you know, shape and work together. And I'll be very interested to see how that working together works online, because you know, it's a different challenge, but I think that's going to be a really interesting one to try.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think my greatest tip about that piece is always look at the tempo marking, which off the top of your head, Bob, can you remember what it is?
Well, I don't actually know what it is, but I can tell you what we have decided on.
Yeah.
I'll stick my neck out here. We have decided on 75.
Okay. I'm very bad at maths. But actually, it's partly not. The maths of it doesn't really matter. The tempo marking is allegro.
I see what you mean.
And you think of the piece as being adagio.
Yes.
But actually, if you approach it like that, then it becomes impossible. It's got movement. It's got direction. And you know, if the conductor sets that character wrong, it's then very hard for the singers. I mean, it's like so often the case. If the conductor gets it wrong, it's impossible for everybody else. Which is, we've all been there. That's what gives conductors sleepless nights, I think. there is a real sense of momentum and motion to that piece. Well, and actually, that is irrespective of the speed it happens at, because with a certain size choir in a certain size building, it'll go faster, it'll go slower, but it's got to feel that it's heading somewhere. Otherwise, yeah, it's a really difficult thing to sing. But if it's pegging at the right direction, then all of those contrasts and the drama of it, it's just a fantastic thing to work on.
We've talked about you and the choir. We've covered Fauré. We've covered Bruckner. If I just give you a little insight of what we've been up to.
Yes, please.
Which, as I said, the whole thing operates in a 4-week patch. We call it a step. And my approach to this came about because I'd seen a lot of online projects, and for a lot of amateur singers, being sent a sort of a tonky piano accompaniment and being told to sing into your iPhone and then send it back, and that's it. If that's the whole process, that's pretty dispiriting. So we sort of set about creating a much broader experience. So all the other things that we can't replace the simultaneous singing. That's accepted, but we're trying to replace some of the other aspects of choral singing, the social side, and so we do a recording, a video recording. We do it in our own fresh way, which I think it works really quite well. So we do analysis sessions. We do vocal coaching with Matt. We even have our own wine bar. So it's a virtual wine bar that people can just book a space in. A stool, we call it. We can book a stool, and what we're trying to do in a lot of the add-ons is do small groups, because this is rather dull for some of these people. They're just sitting to listen to you and me yak, because so everyone has to be muted. But if you can get activities happening that spin around the project on small groups, then it's a much more engaging process. So that's the basis of it, really.
Yeah, I think there's so much actually that can be done in this format. We do ear training sessions, and actually they work in a way that wouldn't work in real life. There are things to be said for this that we're sort of discovering because we have to, but
or conversations with conductors, for example.
Exactly so.
No, that's great. So
the next thing I'd like to do is do something in Russian and get a proper Russian to talk us through it.
Fantastic.